Thank you for listening to Scandinavian Crimes Podcast. Be sure to check out the episode links and be part of our other social media platforms where you can leave a topic suggestion or even share some of your insights regarding the subject matter of the episode. We will always do our best to provide a well-researched episode, but sometimes due to limited access to information and translation issues, some information can be lost. It is therefore good to do your own research and get a deeper understanding of a case of your own interest. So with that all said, let us start today's episode.
Welcome to another Scandinavian Crimes. My name is Devante, and say hello to my lovely co-host, Delila.
Hi.
And on this podcast, we'll cover famous Scandinavian criminals who made their mark throughout Scandinavian history. So we are going to continue where we left off on the last episode in terms of the Baneheia Murders, because there was just a lot of information, and I didn't want to bombard you with the entire episode of just strictly one complete story and then the next episode we don't even really get to discuss, or we have one episode of pure discussion. So I did not want to do that. I wanted to split up the story so that way not only can you get the first part all the way up until the arraignment, but essentially we're going to get to the trial today. So this is a part 2. If you did not listen to last week's podcast, I would recommend just stop it right here, go back and listen to the podcast in the entirety, the beginning, the discussion, because a lot of what we will be going over in the discussion, as well as even a lot of the details in the story, will be kind of referenced in this episode. And I don't want you to be lost. I want you to keep up with everything that we're doing, because this is stuff that you need to be aware of. And also just, listening to this story will kind of let you know how things are in the world. And even in the Scandinavian areas, even though you guys have the lowest crime rates comparatively compared to like the West, obviously, but this is just something that I think everyone should be aware of, and I would love for you to keep up with it. So this is part 2, and let's kind of get back into the Baneheia Murders. So this is going to be taking place from the trial moving forward and all that stuff. So keep in mind, again, like I said last episode, Kristiansand is also a place as well as a person in this story. So depending on the context, just letting you know, this is what is going on. So here is the trial aspect of the Baneheia Murders. So on April 23rd, 2001, the trial against Anderson and Kristiansand began. By order of prosecution, General Tor Eskil Bush, both men were charged with identical crimes of rape and premeditated murder. In addition, and unrelated to the murders, Kristiansand was charged with rape and sexual abuse against a girl under the age of 10, indecent assault against a boy under the age of 10 as well, and looking at women through her window while she was getting undressed. So just a side note, these are all the things that he was found guilty of in terms of not only just the Baneheia murders themselves, but also some other things that he had been responsible for in the community. And I guess what often happens with police and prosecution, they tend to stack crimes. So basically you can get a higher sentence or you can actually kind of just get a greater punishment, because then, you're stacked with multiple crimes. So instead of just one case of premeditated murder, they put rape. They also put assault against the boy under the age of 10. So that's about 3 charges right there. And I'm pretty sure they might throw in another one, but those are the 3 directly that they mentioned. But just so you know what's going on, and just in case there's some sort of confusion, that often does happen when they're going to trial to try and get the maximum amount of punishment. Kristiansand confessed in full tears that he had sexually abused a girl 5 times when he was between 15 and 17 years old. Kristiansand also confessed to the charges of the women, but not the charges of the boy. Kristiansand pleaded not guilty to the charge of the 2 counts of premeditated murder and rape. Anderson pleaded guilty to 1 count of rape and 1 count of second-degree murder. The court heard 49 witnesses, 30 for the prosecution and 19 for the 2 defendants. During the testimony, Kristiansand's mother described his childhood as one with a lot of tantrums and rage. In elementary school, he would frequently get into fights as well as have verbal outbursts with his teachers. The mother said his hot temper made him a target for older children to pick on, and during the 8th grade, he had enough. He would leave home from school in the morning like usual, but it turned out later that he had not been in school for half a year. He dropped out of school altogether in the 9th grade and was since then involved with child psychiatric services. During the trial, prosecutor Edward Dahl painted Viggo Kristiansand as an extremely violent psychopath who was obsessed with pornography and rape. 2 forensic psychiatrists testifying the prosecution noted that he was an intellectual, quite simple, and was unable to grasp basic terms and expressions. Furthermore, they described Kristiansand as chaotic and with an immature sexuality. They further concluded that he did not have any serious mental disorder, but rather had an emotional, unstable personality disorder. According to a 40-year-old neighbor who has worked as a community worker, described Viggo Kristiansand as a ticking time bomb during his testimony. He based this on his gut feeling as well as his alleged previous experience with bullies and punks. The prosecutor also cast serious doubt on the veracity of John Helge Anderson's version of events. Amongst other things, Anderson had no explanation for why the girls were wearing each other's clothes when they were found. Furthermore, Anderson had changed his story several times during interrogation, and only when confronted with evidence had he admitted to molesting the girls as well as covering the bodies with pine branches. He never showed any signs of remorse, seeing himself as another victim of his co-defendant. Court psychiatrists noticed his striking tendency to blame every aspect of crime on Kristiansand, but could not agree on a definite diagnosis. In the end, it was Anderson's statement that was the main pillar of the verdict against Kristiansand. After a while of deliberation, Viggo Kristiansand was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 21 years imprisonment, containment equivalent to a life sentence basically in the area in which this happened. John Helge Anderson was found guilty of 1 count of murder and rape and sentenced to 19 years in prison according to the verdict. It was determined by the court that Viggo Kristiansand was the leading force behind the crime. The court established that Kristiansand and Anderson both had subnormal IQs of 83 and 84 respectively. And for those of you who may not understand what 83 and 84 IQ respectively kind of indicates, is essentially it's a below average IQ, and statistically, at least in the United States, people who typically do have below average IQs usually have a higher chance/propensity of committing crimes like this, especially if they're in an environment where they were not socially, they didn't grow up socially correct in a way that was, I guess, deemed socially acceptable. And often they were bullied, and often it can be reflected in their behavior as well, which kind of showed throughout his tantrums where he didn't have any kind of emotional control. So even though he was competent to stand trial and he was by no means like someone who was completely out of their mind, he still had a subpar IQ, meaning he was not of typical or standard IQ levels. So back to what I guess I was talking about. IQs of 83 and 84 respectively that Kristiansand is to be considered dangerous, has pedophile tendencies, small or no possibility of improvement, and that is a reasonable danger that might again commit violent acts and sexual abuse. The court appointed psychiatrists concluding that Kristiansand had a severe personality disorder. The presiding judge, Asbjørn Næss Hansen, wrote in his following sentencing: each of the victims has been subjected to an extreme burden of having been forced to listen to the other being raped while moaning in pain. Lena must have thoughts about what would happen to her while Stein's Sophie was being raped. After Lena was killed, Stein's Sophie must have heard defenders quarreling about who was going to kill her. John Helge Anderson explained that Stein's Sophie took Lena's arm, later peered at her after she understood what possibly might happen to her. She probably understood at the time that Lena was dead. As the district court has affirmed in its judgment, it is not possible to comprehend the fear and the suffering that the 2 girls went through before they finally died. Immediately after the sentencing inside the courtroom, news channel TV2 recorded Kristiansand's reaction while he had a grin on his face while chewing gum. They later aired the videotape during the evening news after Kristiansand's lawyer told the media that Kristiansand had been absolutely devastated by the verdict. In a 2008 interview, Kristiansand explained his reaction, saying that he was smiling at the mere absurdity of the situation. He also accused the media of using the clip to portray him as this cold-blooded monster without emotions. This incident sparked a long legal conflict between TV2 and the court due to a law banning the recording of defendants inside the courtrooms. TV2 was eventually cleared of any wrongdoing. Viggo Kristiansand was not given an ordinary prison sentence, but rather sentenced to containment. The Norwegian legal term is forvaring, a form of special protective custody, which means he may be held in a prison indefinitely and is subject to release only at the discretion of a judge after his sentence is served. Containment is roughly comparable to a life sentence in many European countries. Kristiansand is serving his sentence at La Prison, while Andersen was serving his sentence at Telemark Prison in Skien up until 2012, when he was transferred to a minimum security prison in order to better prepare him for his eventual release on parole, possibly April 2013. Andersen was actually released in January 2015. He has since settled in the city of Tønsberg, and as of right now, he has not been up to anything that anyone can recall. So this story is one of the most extreme stories that you'll hear about that happened relatively recently in terms of people being released within the last like 6-7 years. This was a really violent and gruesome crime, and I want people also in general that this is the reason I covered this story in particular. The reason why we agreed to the story in general is simply because there is also a huge discrepancy in terms of sexual abuse in a lot of cases that unfortunately the news, the courts don't cover, that I feel like it's important. We need information like this out there so that way not only families can be safe, but also, you know, so they can see the signs of when something's wrong and it's not too late. And that's kind of what the point of this podcast is, to bring awareness, to let people know that you need to pay attention to these signs, pay attention to what your children are doing, pay attention to the people around your children, and also paying attention to family, because next week as well, we're going to be covering just a topic in general that is very much important and prevalent, and something that even I have some experience with in terms of my personal, stories that I think people need to know about, especially when it comes to the children and just the concept of predators, and how in 2023 officially there is information that we're learning, and now we're starting to be in this realm of recognizing the symptoms of crimes like this. But besides all that, Delila, let me know, what did you think about this crazy, like this case was out of control on so many levels, and there's a lot of things going on. They had a below average IQ level, they're having this personality disorder. It seems like there was a lot of genetic components that I am not excusing their actions, but it seems like they did have, unfortunately they did have the traits to develop these kind of, behavior, and the signs were there, but the parents once again did not realize that the signs were there because they just took the temper tantrums. But I'm ranting again, but tell me, what did you think about this? Because this was absolutely mind-boggling to me.
Okay, so I have a lot of anger right now. This motherfucking Kristiansand, I believed in him in the first part. I was like, okay, you know what? Benefit of the doubt. He was just like a friend who just, he was part of it, but he didn't really do the crimes. And here we have history of him. This little shit. We have a history of him already sexually abusing girls, and he did say he didn't do it on the boy, but I don't give a shit because he have a history of it, and I'm pissed and I'm frustrated. I trusted him to be not as bad as he was, and it ended up him being a horrible person anyways. And this just means that you can't trust predators. I'm pissed. I'm so furious right now, and I just want to die.
Why did you trust him in the first place? Were you developing character attachment?
I didn't trust Andersen because he was just being funky and stuff, right? And then I was like, maybe he was he was, because Andersen was saying in the first one that, I was intimidated by Kristiansand, yada yada, right? And then I thought maybe he's just telling the story from Kristiansand's side point of view, and that Kristiansand was basically the one being super, nervous and didn't know he did still commit the crime. He's still a piece of shit, but I didn't think he was this bad. I didn't think it was this bad. And I was like, and now I believed Anderson, but then in the end it turned out that Anderson was mixing up the story and changing it, and I was like, okay, you know what, we will never know what really happened. Maybe they did something even more horrible that we don't know about, but they just like they admitted they did some things, but maybe they did something even more horrible to them, and you know, they wouldn't know. I don't know. Both of them are equally and utterly trash to the core. I feel like Anderson got the least. I think also that the reason Anderson got not the highest, like, as Kristiansand, because he didn't have no history. He didn't have the history of being violent. He didn't have the history of, you know, the aggression, and he didn't get any diagnosis either, as like Kristiansand did. But as you said before, this is something that I was thinking about, because I don't trust Anderson. Like, he's a piece of shit too, but like, he said that, you know, the behavior of blaming and also playing the victim and all of this, that is what concerns me. They both did have no remorse for what they did. They didn't understand the fact that these two girls, especially Lena, had to watch and see her friend getting sexually abused and murdered, and then she, you know, it's like both of them. I feel like I thought he would have some kind of diagnosis. The Anderson one, maybe he was just like, you know, trying to hide things. And they said that both of their IQs were like below normal. It was like 80 something. But I feel like, you know, Anderson was going for the sympathy act. Like, hey, I'm a victim too. He scared me. He was scary because he has a history. I don't have a history of anything. But like, you don't show no remorse. You acting like everything is his fault. I haven't done anything. I'm innocent. And then he ended up admitting that he also was part of the sexual assault, obviously, because we found DNA. And I'm like, you know what? The conclusion of all of this, they're both trash. I hate them. I'm sorry. I'm so mad. I'm so pissed.
It sounds like you developed
I don't know why
I
believed Kristiansand. I don't know why I was like, you know, I think Anderson is the twisted one, but it ended up. That's why in the I should have. You last episode, you were like you were hinting things. You knew this. You knew about this.
I mean, I always say, you know, don't pass judgment until you finish, you know, the story. They both, even though one had history, they both were sick in their own ways.
I shouldn't have believed him.
You shouldn't even do it. Like, why are you treating this like your character?
I was truly believing in. I trust. Okay, I didn't trust. You know, I knew both of them were trash, but like, I just didn't know how trash Kristiansand was. I thought he was just like the friend who just did that, you know. And then now we hear that he was like a ticking time bomb. He was aggressive. He was like all of these things. And now I'm like, I don't know why I had this image of him that he was forced doing it, and he was, you know, scared. When he's like I believe Anderson in this part that he probably felt intimidated by Kristiansand, but he was also interested in doing the acts too, because they were both talking about it in detail, and he also did commit them, and he didn't show any remorse. So he probably felt intimidated, but I think he, you know, he probably like he did that fully because he wanted to. They
were both just sick in their own ways, because they, even when they try to do this whole, like, you know, in the story where they said like the news took a picture of him, and he had like a straight face, and he was chewing gum, and he had like not even a straight face, he was actually smiling a little bit. And then basically he tried to say like he was smiling at the absurdity of the situation. I'm like, that's still a very odd reaction in court, because you were basically found guilty, and then your thing is to smile. And I don't even know when he smiled. I'm assuming.
And his excuse was also trash.
Yeah, it was a very trash. Like I said, he was like, it was because of the absurdity of the situation. I'm just like, that's still not a reason to smile. It's one thing you shake your head. It's one thing, you know, maybe you roll your eyes, but the fact that you had a smile, I'm like, that's a sign that you don't really care. Like you're like, you have this detachment from these little girls, and your victims, they were people, and you're smiling at the situation. I'm like, no. But also, he was
what did they say? He was psychotic and had a personality.
Yeah, like he had a form of like a personality disorder. But also, I think I want to talk about too, like, I'm not blaming the mother in no way, shape, or form, because I don't know what was going on throughout his childhood.
The mother of Kristiansand?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to blame the mother and say like it's her fault. I have no idea what she did or what she didn't do when he was a child. I'm bringing her up because, look, I know most people, when you hear the podcast, you don't want to admit it. When you have children, look, as much as you want your children to be angels and, you know, these wonderful people, most of their actions you can prevent by being, you know, a very present parent, doing the best you can, showing them love and teaching them right from wrong. Sure, you know, there's no perfect way or one way to be a parent. But when you start to see signs in your children that they are going to be very disruptive, and not even just like regular little kid behavior, I mean like things like this where they have a propensity for violence and they are throwing tantrums, they are angry, and then they're hostile. Like when you see those signs, you need to pay attention and you need to get help quickly, because once those traits cement into a child, it's usually an indication that their behavior can escalate when they get to a certain age, especially little boys. I say specifically little boys because unfortunately, well, I don't know, it's just nature, I guess, but you know, their behavior, that part of their brain isn't fully developed until they're it's like it doesn't really develop until they're like 25. So I'm like, that's why a lot of boys tend to make a lot of like mistakes, or they have poor choices, because two reasons: one, because their brain is still developing and still growing, and also two, if you don't teach them the correlation between cause and effect of right and wrong behaviors, they're going to think their behavior is okay, and then once they cement into that personality, it's pretty much a wrap after that. There's almost nothing you can do once a kid becomes a teenager with those behavioral traits, because then that's their personality. That's essentially who they're going to be for the rest of their life, unless they want to change. So when you see those signs, please.
I also want to, I continue.
And when you see those signs, just pay attention. Even if it's your own kids, I know you love your kids unconditionally. Just whenever you see something and you suspect that it might be a problem, I would rather you go get those behaviors evaluated and see if, you know, maybe there is something going on, and you can do something about it sooner rather than later, so that way you don't end up with situations like this where you're a mother testifying in court like, when I was younger, like, I didn't think he would kill anyone, but he had behaviors like this. And then, you know, there's patterns of it. You know, this can be prevented to some level. So it's not the mother's fault, but because, you know, especially back in the day, people didn't know the signs.
See the signs, be attentive, even though you are a present parent, even though you have love, the care and everything, you do everything for the child. It doesn't change the fact that some behaviors need some evaluation or some kind of treatment from a specialist or an expert in that area. And that's what you said also. Like, I just wanted to point out that it's hard as a parent to see those things, because, you know, you don't really know what's going on with the child either. We don't really know what happened in their environment either. Maybe something changed and happened, and she thought that, you know, that was an end result of, you know, the environment changing in his life, and that he was reacting to that, for example. But like, we don't really know their personal life in detail. I don't know if they have it in the internet or anywhere else where they specify what happened in his personal life in that regard. But I just want to make sure that, you know, if you see signs of this, it's okay to get help, to find help, and that because there's this stigma that parents don't want to believe that something is happening with their kids.
Yeah, because it makes them feel like they did a bad job.
Yeah. And you think that it's not your fault necessarily when it comes to situations like this. Sometimes you do need help, and that's fine. And I just want to clarify that you know, it's fine to get help if needed. That will help the child to, you know, work out those things rather than waiting for situations like this to happen.
I said absolutely. But yeah, that was just one thing I wanted to point out, because I feel like I feel like not enough people bring the attention to. I get it that he committed a crime, but also there is a lead up to stuff like this. It's not like he just had the perfect life. He was a perfect kid, and then 95% of the time, it's not like they wake up in the morning and be like, I'm going to kill 2 little girls and sexually assault them. Like, that does not happen. There's usually some sort of pattern that was floating under the radar that never got taken seriously or never really got corrected. And unfortunately, it traveled with that person until the day they decided to commit a crime. So this is not to insult any parents. This is not to, bring anyone down. This is just, hey.
Wait, now that I think about it, though, he was 15 to 17 when he assaulted a child that was under 10, right? Did he get any jail? Do they do that when they're I don't know really how the laws in Norway is.
I'm pretty sure it's similar, like a juvenile detention center.
Yes.
Yeah, because he's underage. So depending on the crime, if it wasn't anything overwhelmingly extreme, either he could have got probation or a very short term. And
I mean, isn't that a sign though if they see someone around their teenage years assaulting someone that is a child, that isn't that a tendency to?
Yes, but like I said, also that's what happens when people don't pay attention, where they just think oh, he probably just did it because he's an angry kid, which I'm pretty sure he was an angry kid. But people always, and I really hate that this happens, people see behavior and they always treat the behavior in a bubble.
He's just a teenager. He doesn't know better.
They give him excuses.
You do. You're a teenager.
Yeah. So that's probably what it was. He probably did get caught up for some crimes when he was, at that age. And then unfortunately, people just did not pay attention. And then, like I said, it traveled with him all the way until he was 18, 19. And then it escalated, unfortunately. And I think
Kristiansand was 21 when he got sentenced. So he must have been around 20.
Yeah, I know, because when they first got charged, when they were remember it was 2000, so they were 18, 19 in 2000, and then a year later when they finally got to the trial, they were 20, 21. So yeah, they were a year apart. So I know one was 18, one was I think one was 19, one was 20, something like that.
21 that happened. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're a year apart or something like that. So I know by the time the trial came, either they both were in their 20s or one of them was in their 20s for sure, and then one was still in their very late teens. Essentially, this was a roller coaster of feelings in general. But like I said, in the last episode, and Delila said in the last episode, stuff like this is really more to have the discussion and also bring awareness of situations like this. Because even though this happened in the year 2000, 2001, in terms of the trial itself, this stuff still does happen. There are still predators. There are still murderers. There are still people who have the desire to sexually assault women, young girls, young boys, and in some cases, even grown men. So these stories are just, unfortunately, these are things that happen. But also, if we don't know our history, what's the saying? We're doomed to repeat it. So we are bringing this to your attention so that way you can see the signs from both ends, both perspectives, not only as a victim, but also know when someone is showing signs of potentially being a threat, a problem. So that way you can protect yourself and you can take the proper precautions to, take care of yourself, your family, and your friends and the people you care about. So just keep these things in mind because it is important. And I think over the next couple episodes, well, not couple, but I know there's a few episodes we want to do where it's not about specific cases, right? We just want to do like topics. We want to
talk about the general topic about things, because we feel like this is actually pretty normal. Like, there's a lot of predators out there, and we wanted to just like talk about and just like a general information episode, I guess, and talk about like I don't know really what we have planned specifically, but we can talk about different cases, but we can also different information about, it's going to be a little bit different than how we regularly do. Like it's not going to be a story, it's going to be more like informative, and we're going to discuss about the topic in itself.
Yeah, so be aware of that, and if you guys like episodes like that, we can probably do it not necessarily every episode, but at least a little more frequently, where we can dive into specifics of certain I guess crimes in particular, like maybe theft, murder, maybe the judicial system or the criminal justice system, whatever. Just the whole point is we're supposed to bring awareness, and I think sometimes if we talk about it so that way we all can understand and kind of see what they are for what they are, then we can kind of, like I said, once again, recognize the patterns and make changes today to change the outcome of our tomorrow. That was a very corny line, by the way, but you get the point.
I also, just before we end everything, I just want to apologize for cursing your ears with my swearing. This subject in general is very hard. It's hard to... I don't think anybody does, but I don't like predators. I don't like when kids or children, being treated this way. And it's a very passionate about this topic. Passionate, thank you. I can't speak English. Okay. About this subject. And my theory was, and last episode, was truly that Kristiansand was not the aggressor. And when I found, it's not that I trusted him as a predator or not. It was more like, I didn't think he was that bad. And, when I found out in this episode that both are, horrible, it just aggravated me even more, because now I can't really, we don't have anything to base anything on. Anderson, we only had the verdict of Addison to really, know anything about this case. And I don't trust him. I don't trust nobody. We don't know how hard the kids what they had to deal with fully, because they could have lied about certain things or not even mention certain things. So when I hear things like that, it just frustrated me, and I burst out. And I apologize. That was not very professional of me.
Nah, go ahead, submit to it. Give in to such raw emotions. It is okay.
I'm sorry. But, I think, most people feel the same way about this issue. And I would gladly have a deep, discussion about the topic in general, because I have a lot of things I want to discuss and also, mention about this. So yeah, but that's all. Again, sorry. Being aggressive and stuff, that's not really how I am.
She's lying. That's exactly how she is. But anyways, I hope you have a safe once again, like I said last episode, have a safe new year. But I hope when you're listening to this that you have a safe, maybe you're on the way to your job, or maybe you're at your job or on your way home. Just whenever you're listening to this, I hope you have a safe travel, safe stay. Pay attention, look at the signs, just give you something to think about. And we will see you in the next one. And just for the sake of tradition, in terms of what we've already established, something positive for the ending of today's episode is always going to be food related, because, we like to eat over here.
Yes.
We are eaters over here. And I would say right now I'm getting a good taste for, honestly, I want your ramen that you made, but
yeah, he liked my ramen that I made for him.
But also, like, I've been really craving like a really good succulent burger, like a genuinely good succulent burger. But
do you know what I'm craving?
What is that?
I'm craving pierogi, which is basically like I don't know if you, I don't think you guys have that, but it's like a bread filled, like a bread that is filled with like stuff like meat or whatever.
Sounds like an empanada.
I think I said it in Russia, but like I say it pirog. I don't freaking know how to say it in English, but it's like bread filled, bread that is filled with meat or veggies or spinach and feta, which is like my favorite. But like there's other thing you can fill it, and it's super good. And I like bread filled with stuff. So
sounds like an empanada. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Just get some good food, and we will see you in the next episode.
Yes.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.